Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Has the meeting been advertised according to the Open Public Meetings Act?
Yes, it has.
Roll call.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mr. Bashada?
Here.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mrs. DePinto?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Mr. McAgnone?
I am present.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Syak?
Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
He just likes looking good.
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of and action upon the hereinafter specified subject matters. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Negotiations with all collective bargaining units. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately. Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes. Mr.
Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. McAgnone?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Good evening and welcome to the May meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. I apologize for the delay. Take notice this public meeting of the Sayreville Board of Ed was emailed to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger in accordance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Further in accordance with NJSA 10:4-621, a copy of this notice is posted outside the Secretary's office and also filed with the Clerk of the Borough of Sayreville. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mr. Bashada?
Here.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mrs. DePinto?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Mr. McAgnone?
Present.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Syak?
Here. Dr. Labby, actually, executive session. Could you summarize what we discussed in executive?
Negotiations for the collective bargaining units.
Thank you very much. We have some presentations. Dr. Labby, I'm going to do the top 10, but I'm sure you'd like to give some introductory comments regarding the top 10 students.
Absolutely.
Moment of
Mr.
silence.
Syak.
Moment of silence.
Oh, okay.
We had several presentations tonight. Obviously, those of you may or may not know in our audience that we have our annual mandatory budget hearing as well. Maybe some of you would like to stick around a little bit later after our very, very important presentation to hear some of that presentation as well. But yes, today is a very special meeting. As you know, the greatest Board of Education meetings that we have are the ones in which we get to celebrate the accomplishments of our students and our staff members. Tonight is a very, very special event because we get a chance to celebrate the most accomplished students in our district, in our high school. We refer to them as our top 10 students. We are so proud of all of their academic achievements. You'll get a chance to hear a little bit more about them by Mr. Syak, but we want those students to know that we recognize the incredible work that they put forth, and we thank them sincerely for being the incredible role models that they are for the rest of our student body. We also want to celebrate two other students who have also achieved many, many things. One a senior, one a junior. They were recently recognized at the Middlesex County School Board Association as well as the Middlesex County Association of Superintendents for their accomplishments. We call those our student achievement recipients. We want to celebrate them as well. And finally, we have the infamous Team 2 from the Odyssey of the Mind program at Sayreville War Memorial High School, who we are so very, very proud of. They not only will be representing Sayreville in Michigan, they're going to be representing the state of New Jersey because they are the state champions. So we want to recognize and celebrate their accomplishments. So without any further delay, Mr. Syak, would you like to help me introduce, celebrate, and honor our Sayreville War Memorial High School top 10 students?
Absolutely. Thank Thank you, Dr. So first of all, on behalf of the Board of Education, I want to congratulate the top 10. It is truly an outstanding accomplishment, especially in a graduating class that is around 410, 415 students, to be able to be in the top 10. It really is an outstanding accomplishment for you and a lot of work that starts your freshman year. This Board of Education has taken its job very seriously in terms of providing a college-ready curriculum for the high school. We've invested in things like advanced placement courses, different relevant courses like robotics that are relevant to the workforce, James Craft's Fedora Productions course, where you have an opportunity to actually blend not only the music pieces and music aspects of choir and performance, but also all the production and business aspects associated with it. So the Board of Education as a whole has really invested a lot into ensuring that we have a competitive academic environment, and I want to congratulate the top 10 students for rising to the top of that competitive academic environment. So without further ado, we're going to call them up. So every student is going to receive an identical resolution, and it reads, whereas the Sayreville Board of Education strives to educate all of our students to the best of their abilities, and whereas it comes to this board's attention that the Sayreville War Memorial High School top 10 students are as follows, and I'll name them in a minute. And whereas the Board of Education is extremely proud of these students for their dedication and perseverance to excel, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, hereby commends and honors the Sayreville War Memorial High School top 10 students for their outstanding accomplishments. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education encourages all students of the Sayreville Public Schools to follow the example of these remarkable students who strive to be the best that they can be. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution, executed by the Superintendent and the Board President on behalf of the Sayreville Board of Education, be presented to the Sayreville War Memorial High School top 10 students at the regular meeting of the Board of Education the second day of May 2017. So first up, we will honor our valedictorian, Michelle George Phillip. Next is our salutatorian, Rahi Parikh. Number 3, Ankita Harish Dindigam. Number 4, Janal Desai. Number 5, Karatulain Annie Butt. Number 6, Michael Brandeo. Number 7, Victoria Isabel Pasang. Number 8, Sarah Swillis. Number 9, Ria Saman. And number 10, Jonathan Conk. Yes, if you come up, we'll take a photo.
Right in front of the board, guys? Don't trip over the wire.
And actually, for our top 10, I'm going to invite the board as well to come out behind our top 10. We'll take a picture. And the administration.
This is the closest I got.
college tuition. Say second mortgage.
And I'm going to ask the top 10 to do one more thing before you sit down. Behind every successful top 10 student is a successful parent or guardian. So I want you to give your parent or guardians a round of applause. And now next up, we have Mrs. Bloom, who is going to honor our two student award-winning recipients from the Middlesex County School Boards Association. This award is based upon not only academic performance, but we look for students who have either overcome significant obstacles in their lives or students who have contributed in a significant way to their school or communities and in a philanthropic fashion. So Mrs. Bloom, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. I've had the pleasure to attend this dinner since I've been on the board, and to sit there and watch all of these young people who are not necessarily the smartest, but who have overcome obstacles, who have shown kindness, who have been generous, and in some instances have excelled academically, is just a wonderful, wonderful evening. And every year there are two from here, two from each district, but it's inspiring to see these children. So I will read to you the resolution, and then we'll call up our two students. Whereas the Sayreville Board of Education strives to educate all of our students to the best of their abilities, and whereas it has come to this board's attention that the Sayreville War Memorial High School MC-ASA, MC-SBA Students of the Year are as follows: Christopher Colucci, grade 12, and Bianca Kuzma, grade 11. And whereas the Board of Education is extremely proud of these students for their dedication and perseverance to excel, and now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, hereby commends and honors the Sayreville War Memorial High School Students of the Year for their outstanding accomplishments, and be it further resolved that this board encourages all students of the Sayreville Public Schools to follow the example of these remarkable students who strive to be the best that they can be, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution executed by the superintendent and the board president on behalf of the Sayreville Board of Education be presented to the Sayreville War Memorial High School Students of the Year at the regular meeting of the Board of Education the second day of May, 2007. And now we'll ask Christopher and Bianca to come up and take their award.
We're going to have the kids stay when the Odyssey of the Mind kids come up, we'll all come together, but want to do a picture right now, Mom and Dad? So let's get away from this. I'm more annoying than the wedding guy. Sheila, can you email me yours?
program that we're going to recognize is the Odyssey of the Mind program. And as was mentioned, we have our state championship Odyssey of the Mind team here. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with Odyssey of the Mind, it's somewhat of a unique program in terms of competition because it rises right up there in terms of a state championship with as compared to an athletic program, but it is an athletic program of the mind. And the program itself, there's basically, you have an opportunity to choose from a selection of 5 different problems, and you've got all year to not only solve the particular problem, but do it in the most creative way that you can. Now, I participated in this program many years ago, and I remember my particular problem was actually to set up a chain reaction with 100 mouse traps. And you not only had to have all these mouse traps go off at once, but you also had to do things like break a balloon and set off an electric car and do all sorts of other things while you were setting off this chain reaction. And it wasn't only about solving the problem, it was about how creatively can you solve the problem. In addition to that, there's also a spontaneous aspect of it, where when you get there the day of the competition, you'll also be given a spontaneous problem that you will have to solve as a group very, very quickly. And that could either be a verbal problem or a non-verbal problem. So here to present the awards for our state championship Odyssey of the Mind team is board member Anthony Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Sack. We didn't have Odyssey of the Mind long ago when I was in high school, but I can tell you that we're very, very proud of you. We do pay so much attention to athletics in this country in general, and it's truly a privilege and an honor to have so many amazing students in front of us. And when Mrs. Sayak speaks about problem solving, the way the world is going today, we're going to need you guys to do a lot of that in the future. And just one other quick note, Saturday I was able to attend the Hall of Fame dinner that we have here. For those of you who don't know, the Hall of Fame is for students of this high school graduate and do amazing things in life later on. And from what I hear and everything I see, you guys are going to be some of those Hall of Famers. So we look forward to seeing you in the future. So, Ms. McCabe, are you here? Yes? Would you like to hand out the certificates?
And Ms. McKay, maybe you can give us a quick summary on what problem 2 is.
Okay. That's fine. For Odyssey of the Mind, each problem, like Mr. Sayak said, they all do different things. For the state champions for problem 2, it's called Autobot. They had to build and make a robot that did human movements. So they had to react to whatever the human was doing. And they took that robot and created a wonderful presentation for everyone to see. And they are so excited for the opportunity to represent Sayreville and New Jersey at World Finals. The students are Chris Patel. Brian Eng.
I told him I need a superintendent robot.
Rita. Someone. Shivani Patel. Matiko. Nikita Diguk. Brodsky. Again, thank you very much.
All right, guys, can you come to the middle with our student recognition recipients? And our Board of Education members, can we ask you one more time to come on up?
I started a trend.
Sorry. I know this is going to reflect negatively in my evaluation.
Yes, sir. Not as bad as that previous.
Come on, Mrs. McCabe.
Bring back the world champion trophy. You're ready back for trouble.
No one wants to stick around for the budget meeting?
No, you don't. You don't.
I did want to make one point, Board of Education members. I don't know if you saw this picture, but with regard to our students, this was a remarkable picture. Here are all our students at the high school that have selected and will be attending a college. If you look at their shirts, you'll see which college they'll be attending. But what I'm most proud of is the amount of students that are on that in those stands. It's incredible. You know, we had a chance at the Hall of Fame dinner to see the maximum student outcomes that we promote at this level. But to see those student outcomes as well makes me as a superintendent, even though I had a very minute part in that, very, very proud of where these kids are going. And it's all because of you folks and their parents and their incredible teachers and administrators and everyone in this district is doing on behalf of them. So I love that picture.
Absolutely. Before we begin the balance of our board meeting, I'm going to ask everyone to rise for a moment of silence. Over the past few weeks, our district has lost several former educators and also one community member who has contributed significantly to our students here in Sayreville. First of all, we lost Norbert Smith. Norby was a mathematics teacher here. I remember he taught me geometry. He was also a baseball coach for the district. He was GMC Baseball Coach of the Year. Long-time dedicated employee to Sayreville War Memorial High School and the Sayreville Public Schools, and a dedicated coach. In addition, Richard Donnellan, who was a middle school instrumental music teacher. Richard Donnellan also served this district for many, many years, dedicated his career here, and really taught students the love of instrumental music, really put his heart and soul into our instrumental music program, and during his time at the middle school, really prepared our students to be successful at the high school level in our high school marching band. In addition, just last week, we also lost former physical education teacher Larry Helwig. Larry Helwig taught most of his career in Sayreville. He started out in Manville. Was not only a physical education teacher, but was also our golf coach for a long period of time. And Larry Helwig was just a perfect gentleman, in addition to being an outstanding golf coach and an outstanding driver's ed instructor. In fact, he also taught me how to drive. Phenomenal individual. And this community member, though not directly an employee of the Sayreville Public Schools, was James Gillette. And Jim Gillette was a philanthropist within our community, but specifically, he was the financial support behind the Sayreville Association for Brain Injured Children, which works hand in hand with our special education program in assisting brain injured children and helping provide them the support, the care, and the education that they need in order to be a success. So I'd like to ask everyone to bow their heads for a moment of silence in memory of Norby Smith, Larry Helwig, Richard Donnellan, and James Gillette. Thank you. Okay, and we'll move on with our regular portion of our agenda at this time. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and executive session held on April 18th?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. McAgnone?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes. Next up is our district highlights, but I believe, Mrs. Bacco, they're the same as what we've just acknowledged. There's no additions?
No.
Okay. Then we've already highlighted our students in the initial presentation. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Labby?
Thank you, Mr. Sack, because today is the day in which we're going to ask you to approve and adopt our budget. We will now ask for a motion to begin our budget hearing.
So moved.
A motion by Mrs. Bloom. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mrs. DePinto. Any remarks? All in favor of commencing our budget hearing? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I don't need a roll call on that, correct? Thank you.
Thank you. As soon as it comes up. Here we go. Okay, it's our honor and privilege to present to you our 2017-18 proposed budget. As you know, we are required to perform a public hearing so that we give the Board of Education and the community an opportunity to ask questions, express concerns, and make recommendations for us to consider before adopting the 2017-18 school district budget. Naturally, it's a collaborative process, beginning with the Board of Education, working its way down to the central administration, principals and directors, assistant principals, non-certificated directors, faculty, support staff, and public. And we'd like to give a very special thanks to Ms. Hill in her first year with us, who did an absolutely tremendous job of working with our finance committee, who also deserves a great deal of commendation for their hard work. I mean, I think we had 3 marathon days with this particular budget, so the amount of time each member of that committee sacrificed to be there with us so that we can get to the final product tonight is nothing less than amazing. So congratulations and my commendations to Ms. Hill and our entire finance committee. Naturally, we want a school district budget that is in alignment with our mission. I'm not going to read the mission to you, but we all know our mission statement here in the public schools of Sayreville. Several years ago, we adopted Vision 2030, and if you're keeping track, now it's our second grade students that we're looking to graduate in 2030. So we, several years ago, created a very aggressive 3-year strategic action plan to begin the process of preparing these students for their graduation from college in the year 2030. And we're going to continue pursuing Vision 2030 for many, many years until they actually do graduate from college. We adopted some goals in the 2016-17 school year. Again, I'm not going to read through all those goals, but as you can see, the first set of goals
focuses on promoting the academic success of all of our students, and we have certain objectives that we want to achieve within that goal. We also want to promote the future success of our students, and we have certain objectives that we want to accomplish within that as well. There are fiscal goals with fiscal objectives, and we're always looking to improve our school culture and climate. And finally, one of our major initiatives this year, and with the help of Dr. Edward Aguilis and Carmen Davis and Shannon Johnson and Dr. Rollins and several other administrators, we've developed a program called the Leadership Academy, and they'll actually begin with an orientation meeting in 2 weeks. So another big part of our goals for 2016-17, building leadership capacity within our administration as well as our faculty. Here's our student enrollment. As you can see, our student enrollment is increasing. Most importantly, you'll notice the top figure, our preschool. Our preschool is turning into a small elementary school. It's pretty amazing. As you know, we've been able to generate a great deal of money through our preschool program, combining with our preschool children with disabilities program with a tuition program so that we give many of those students an opportunity to be educated in the least restrictive environment with their typically developing peers has been a great success, and we've been recognized by the Department of Education as being a model preschool program. But that program is climbing. As you can see, our student enrollment is projected to be around 6,300 students next year, with that preschool increasing. We began the budget development process in October when we had our State of the Schools address. We then presented several workshops where we highlighted different departments, major departments that contribute to the development of that budget. Our principals presented their budgets in January. We had a technology, curriculum and instruction, athletics presentation in February. Special education, transportation, and personnel at the end of February. And then, if you remember correctly, in the first March meeting, we had to approve the preliminary budget. We're naturally, right now, at the public hearing. If the board adopts this final budget, it will then go to submission to the DOE, and then hopefully to submission to the tax certificate office. We did have several challenges in the development of this budget. We are in the process of collectively bargaining with all of our units this year. That's created quite a challenge to the budgeting process, as you know. Payroll compensation is a good 90% or 85% of our budget. So to have to collectively bargain all of your collective bargaining groups is quite a challenge to budget. We do, as I noted before, in enrollment, we did have an increase in student population. As Mr. Bichada will tell you, through our Buildings and Grounds Committee, our facilities are aging, and the amount of reparations that we need continues to grow. And we have had an increase in special education enrollment, as I said before, particularly in the preschool. However, with every budget, we want to plan for the future. We want to maintain our school system. We want to raise student standards, protect our investment, and naturally build professionalism. All of that, by the way, is in alignment with the 2016-17 goals that I presented to you previously. In planning for the future, again, we want to develop now a new 3-year strategic action plan. We want to focus on continuing to raise revenues to support future budgets. Advertising is still that one area that we're still trying to wrestle with. We still want to work at increasing student achievement at all levels, particularly for some of our at-risk students. We want to enhance our school climate and culture and improve our staff morale. How are we going to try to maintain or improve our school district? Well, in this budget, you'll see items allocated toward the purchase of new textbooks, and we'll talk a little bit more about those specific textbooks. We're also, for the very first time, we applied 10 years ago to be a part of the Air Force Junior ROTC program. And we are very excited to be able to announce that we are going to launch that program next September. So this budget does include the compensation for the commissioned officer and the non-commissioned officer instructors for that program. I will say that within this program, the Air Force does reimburse us for approximately 50% of their salaries. We want to continue to purchase and fund professional services. One of the big highlights in this budget is we want to fund a new budgeting and financial software. We want to continue to provide one-to-one instructional devices for our elementary schools, our middle school and our high school. There are so many powerful softwares that our children can utilize during instruction to enhance their learning. We need one-to-one devices in order to do that. We're funding a new literacy program for our primary grades, kindergarten and first grade, with these funds. And then we want to continue to utilize some of those same softwares that I spoke about just a moment ago to improve learning for all of our students. In terms of maintaining our school system, we want to enhance our school climate and culture. One of the things that we're focused real hard is on school security. And one of the products that we want and we budgeted for in this budget is something called Call Pass, and it's a new visitor software that's going to allow us to manage the flow of people that come in and out of our buildings. If you talk to people about school security, the number one way of protecting students and staff from, heaven forbid, an incident in a school is to reduce the flow of people in and out of your building and to manage the people that come in and out of your building. And this Call Pass software does that, not only for visitors, but it also does for our staff members. We also want to focus on character education in the elementary schools. 2 of our elementary schools are piloting something called the Responsive Classroom. By next year, we want all of our elementary schools utilizing the Responsive Classroom. And finally, we want a software that's going to help us manage the harassment, intimidation, and bullying process. As we all know, the governor signed in several years ago the anti-bullying statute. It requires a great deal of process. Within that process, we have to conduct an investigation that has to be very precise in determining whether it was HIV, and if so, what are the recommendations for actions. This software is going to help us out with that. We want to continue to do the best we can to improve the morale of our staff, all of our staff. So we're going to continue to focus on our half and full professional development days, teacher coaching and consultant, additional Sayreville University courses and programs, the Leadership Academy, other district activities, and other building activities. As I said before, we are focused on raising student standards. Again, it begins with our junior ROTC program. I mentioned the new literacy program. We want to continue with our literacy and math tutoring before school, our literacy and math academies. We want to purchase a software called Achieve 3000 for our middle school that will enhance the literacy and development of our students, not only in English language arts, but also in social studies and science, where students will be able to read expository text at a level that is in alignment with their independent reading levels. We also want to focus on new novels for our 6th grade English language arts curriculum, new calculus textbooks that are in alignment with the New Jersey student learning standards, new chemistry, physics, and environmental science textbooks that are in alignment with the next generation science standards, new English language learning textbooks, and funds for making a continuing shift in our science programs at the high school. Some of the highlighted features here are some of those features that I just mentioned. The monetary cost for them, as you can see, Achieve 3000 is there. Lincoln is our data warehousing software that we use to manage the student academic data. Also, it's a software that our teachers are using to develop assessments to measure the learning that goes on in their classrooms. But as you can see, the money allocated there for band instruments, our TV studio equipment, assistive technology, Chromebook carts and Chromebooks, science kits, the K-1 reading program is there. We want to continue providing our teachers with resources they need to implement guided reading. Those middle school science textbooks that I referenced earlier, and so forth. Those the calculus textbooks, so forth. Operational efficiencies. We mentioned it at our transportation proposed budget presentation. We want to go ahead and, if possible, change the times for the Sayreville Elementary School so that they are in alignment with the middle school. This will save us approximately $400,000 if we do that. Also, to assist us in lowering costs for transportation, which will reduce, again, another contracted bus, single route bus, which are by far the most expensive contracted routes. We also want, we have in this budget, to lease purchase 2 full-size and 1 minibus. And of course, because of the fact, as you know from our special education budget presentation, we pretty much cut in half the number of students that we're educating out of district. One benefit to that, one additional benefit to that is we reduce the number of out-of-district transportation runs. So by reducing the number of students that are being educated in private out-of-district schools, we're also reducing the number of those out-of-district transportation runs. That will save us quite a bit of money. Naturally, we want to protect our investment through a long-range facility plan. As you can see in the agenda that you have for this evening, we are asking to approve a contract with our architect to go ahead and formally develop so that we can submit to the New Jersey Department of Education our new 5-year long-range facility plan. However, when it comes to facilities, as we mentioned earlier, there is much work to be done. Our facilities are aging and they are in need of reparations. Here are some of the many reparations that we're going to fund through the general budget. One of the items that we're asking you to also approve within that is we want to go ahead and we want to change the fire prevention system in what's called the MDF room, and that's where we have most of our servers. Right now, there is a sprinkler in there, and what's wrong with that? Well, if there is a fire, the water is going to come down from that sprinkler, and what's it going to do to our servers, Mr. Glock-Malloy? All right, so we want to change those sprinklers to a chemical suppression system. So heaven forbid, if there is a fire, the chemical will suppress the fire, not water, which will not destroy our servers. And those are the current sprinklers that are up now. Also within that, a couple of slides ago, we talked about replacing the sidewalk at the middle school. There is the sidewalk that needs to be replaced. We do have some capital outlay projects that we'd like you, we're asking you to fund within this budget. Here they are. The big one would be finishing the Wilson bathrooms and replacing, doing a partial window replacement at the Arlington Elementary School. You might have remembered that we talked about changing those open space classrooms at the Truman School, partitioning them off. They are not part of this budget, but that is work that is going to be done. We're actually going to use existing capital reserve funds to do that this school year. So that will not be a part of the 17-18 school year budget, but it is going to take place. So the Truman School, we will finally be putting up permanent partitions in those open space clusters that are currently there. Here are some pictures of bathrooms that naturally, as you look at these pictures, they need to be replaced at the Wilson School. And of course, we talked about building our professionalism. We want to continue to work with our professional development achievement coaches. I mentioned before they have days, more opportunities for teacher coaching, and again, more opportunities through Sayreville University, the new Teacher Institute is NTI, and the Curriculum Instruction Teacher Initiative courses that we offer. As you all know, Shannon Johnson has done an amazing job of professionally developing our teachers, building staff morale through that incredible program she developed called Sayreville University. We want to continue with that momentum and continue to grow that program. We did have to make some changes to the preliminary budget that was approved in early March. Here are those changes that we made. And I believe the construction service there is the partitions.
Yes, it is.
At the Truman School. So as you can see, we took that out of the preliminary budget because we are actually using existing capital reserve funds to pay for that. Personnel, as I mentioned earlier, when you look at a budget, a good 81% of it is personnel related.
whether it's compensation for our employees or it's health benefits for our employees. Not health benefits, benefits for our employees, total benefits, which can include health benefits, Social Security, workers' compensation, and so forth. There will be some staff reductions. They're noted here on this slide. As well, there'll be some new staff, which is noted on the next slide. When you pull apart personnel costs, you can see that general education instruction has the largest piece of the pie. About 37% of the personnel budget is dedicated to that. As you can also see, benefits is about 24% of your personnel budget. Special education instruction, 16%. And then administration and operations, about 7%. Here are the total appropriations for all major areas of this budget. Here's how it looks. Of the operating budget, again, the biggest piece of that pie is general education instruction, so 30% of the budget is dedicated toward that. 19% is dedicated toward benefits. Support services and special education take about 23%. Special revenue are the grants that we receive, the non-entitlement grants. One word of caution that we were given is we weren't sure how much money we were going to get next year, so I think we budgeted.
We budgeted 85% of the current year award.
As we all know, the federal government is moving in different directions. We're not quite sure what direction they're going to move in, so we were very conservative in budgeting only 85% of what we were entitled to this year. Here are debt services. Our revenues, which naturally match with our appropriations. As you can see, 24%, almost 25% of our revenue is from state aid. Only that. And as Mr. Bashada has said many times, we're about $19 million below adequacy, meaning that we should be funded $19 million more by the state of New Jersey based upon the accepted formula. However, as you all probably know and are following, the state of New Jersey has not been following that formula. And districts like Sayreville really get hurt. For us, it's the tune of $19 million. Obviously, our local tax levy, we rely 70% on our local tax levy. Here's a little visual picture of it. Again, 70% of our revenue comes from the local tax levy. 25% comes from state aid. And you can see where everything else falls. Here's our debt services revenue. If you compare our revenue, 4% of that comes from debt services, 2% comes from special. The rest comes from general fund. 94% of that. What will it cost the average taxpayer?
Tax impact for a home of $144,000 value, as you can see there. Both results in a $78.90 increase annually for the average home in Sayreville at $144,000. Board of Education members, any questions?
Dr. Lab, I have a question on the ROTC instructors. I thought we had originally approved $100,000, and I see now it's $120,000.
In the original budget, it's $120,000. We budgeted that.
Okay, but,
But the cost is going to work out to about $100,000.
okay.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we do the superintendent's report.
So I have a question also about the ROTC. I'm all for it. I think it's awesome. Great job, Mr. McEnone, getting this done. Took a while. Do we know if there's any interest at this point? We have 2 instructors. Do we know how many kids will be signing up? or
Already,
Take a straw
before
poll?
our kids even have seen or have heard that we have instructors, there are 60 students,
60 already.
9th grade students, 60 9th grade students who have demonstrated interest.
Is there a ceiling? Do we have to cap it?
We have to get to 100 students in 2 years. But my feeling is, with 60 9th grade students, as soon as they see, as we said during our interviews, boots on the ground, and they see an actual person come in, if you so appoint these people tonight, and when they come in and kids begin to see them, I think many of our current high school students will begin to actually believe that this is going to occur. And I believe, personally, that we'll be over 100 students by the time school begins in September.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Labby, Mr. McEnone, could you please explain to the public of the benefit of this? It's not a recruiting instrument, but explain about the morale, or Dr. Labby, either one of you, so the public doesn't think that this is a...
It's not rocket science. Well, actually, it is rocket science. It's an aerospace program. Go ahead.
The curriculum is aerospace science. It's science, astronomy is the academic piece of it. It's not a recruitment for the military, and a lot of people get confused with that. It's a violation of public law if these instructors would encourage kids to enter the military or to set them up with a recruiter. That's not why this program is here. The mission of the program is really is quoted as building better citizens for America dedicated to serving their community and school. And you do that through advanced character education. And since this is a school, there has to be an academic component of it. And since the Air Force's realm of operation is aerospace, that's what it's based on. It's aerospace science. The program's tenets are leadership, self-discipline, and community service. And there's a big community service component of the program. There were many after-school activities. And when you see a number of 120,000, as Dr. Labby alluded to, 70,000 of that is going to be reimbursed back to the district. So what you're paying is not what it's costing you. Also, based on enrollment that's reported every year by the school of kids in the program, they get X number of dollars, either $25 a student for some things, like for going on trips, what they call operation and maintenance. So if they want to go on a curriculum and action trip to the Hayden Planetarium, they have money to bust. It's not school funds. Once the program is approved by the board, the school will get what they call a starter package, which will consist of computers, all the curriculum, uniforms, everything that you need, so there's no cost whatsoever or burden on the district. The only cost of the district is partial salaries of the instructors. And when I talk about instructors, you're getting individuals that are, they spent at least 20 years of active duty service. As a matter of fact, the senior instructor is a colonel. He was in the reserves, and his actual job, he's an airline pilot, flew for United, he's got thousands of hours. So he's infinitely qualified to instruct the program. So perhaps at a future board meeting, we can have them come to a meeting and introduce it. The reason it took 10 years is that there's such a waiting list for this types of programs because the districts that have them realize the bang for the buck of the program. Are there kids that take the class that want to go into the military? Absolutely. And if they do take the class for 3 years, every service will give them at least a stripe, some 2 stripes, once they get a basic training for taking the class in high school. So there are some benefits to the kids that want to do that. But a school like Sayreville War Memorial High School, we have a number of students that go in the military anyway, especially from this town This is a very patriotic, pro-military veteran kind of town. So it's a natural fit. It's a good program. I know Mr. Bashad has been harping on it for a while, and finally we got it. Now we have the opportunity. We got 2 qualified instructors, and we're excited. And Mr. Brown, he's beside himself. I mean, he was all giddy about having the program, and you'll see the kids will be very visible in the community, color guards at the football games and things like that. That's all part of the program. So I can go on, but I know we got a minute.
But it's only fitting, Mr. McEnone, Sayreville Bombers, Air Force.
I would, hoo-yah.
And just to be crystal clear.
Crystal
because
clear.
People have come up to me and said, are you going to be recruiting our children? They cannot speak to our children at all about.
Well,
benefits
if
of
a
it,
student
but-
comes over and starts asking, the instructor will call the parent and say, you know, your kid's asking these questions. It's not a recruitment program, meaning they can't invite recruiters to come in and talk to the kids.
Okay.
That's not why the program is here. And I'll tell you, that's a fact. It's a violation of public law. And, high schools and boards of education wouldn't allow these programs if it was a recruiting tool. Some schools, I know for a fact, Old Bridge High School has a program, it's had one since 2000. They have more kids that leave that high school that go into the military that never took that class than have taken the class. So it's odd. And then the kids come back and they say, hey, if I was in that program, I'd have 2 more stripes now. Well, yeah, that's right. But crystal clear, the answer is no.
Thank you.
And if that's a concern out there, as we, market this program, can we hit that, concern hard that it's not a recruiting tool?
Yeah, I think what's a wise thing to do when we mention it is, have an information meeting for the parents at the beginning of the school year, an orientation, to say what the program's about, meet the instructors. They can get on the websites, they can look at it. It's absolutely, positively not a recruiting program.
Because I could also see this program feeding into some of our other courses or offerings at the high school,
Absolutely.
because it's here. And Dr. Labby and I have talked about the challenges that we've had with the Boy State program, where we'll get 17 applicants who apply for Boy State. We'll spend a day interviewing the 17. We'll get it down to 5 delegates and 5 alternates. And all they have to do is fill out paperwork and get it in by April 3rd. And this year, out of 5 delegates and 5 alternates, we had 2 delegates and 1 alternate turn it in. And I'm thinking that a program such as the Air Force ROTC, as it builds character, as it builds discipline,
Right.
first of all, Boy State sponsored by the American Legion, so I see a natural fit there.
Sure.
But the character, the discipline, that piece may help bolster some of the other issues that we're seeing.
I know personally of a ROTC program where all those kids that apply to Boy State and Girl States go because of the similarity and the relationship there.
Yeah.
So,
Other questions?
I have one more question. I had originally thought that we determined that they were going to be full-time instructors in the school building, but if you only have 60 kids, that's not a full day. So what do they do when they're downtime?
They're going to have over, I believe, at least they're going to have 100 kids. Right now, there are 60 kids that have demonstrated interest,
Okay,
but I believe they're going to be over 100.
then that would be a full day.
Mrs.
Question,
Becker?
as far as the number of years, can someone be in this program from freshman to senior? Can they
Yep.
take it 1 year?
You can come in as a senior, you can come in
You
as
can
a
come in
junior, you
as a
come in as a
senior.
freshman. It's been my experience that when a kid comes in as senior, says, Don, I wish I would have done this from the first year. Because the curriculum is focused on all grades. It's not specific. The courses are not prerequisites to each other. They're standalone courses, and you come in at any time and benefit from it.
And if our enrollment becomes too large, do we have the option to get another 2 more instructors, or?
You can request a third instructor, but you have to have 250 students or more for 2 consecutive years. Okay, the instructors will figure that out, and what they'll do is, they'll make it like a college course. When it's full, it's full. First come, first served type of thing, because how many seats do you have in the classroom? You're going to put 30 kids in the classroom, you have 7 periods a day, is it? So you're looking at 210 kids. Then the after-school program starts to become unmanageable. It's like a pyramid. The most kids on the bottom, and as you get up to the top, you start to thin the herd, so to speak. So, good questions. Any other questions, just send me off emails.
Any other questions on ROTC, and then I'll ask about the balance of the budget. Any other questions on the balance of the budget?
Just one question. You had one slide with the change because of the Truman walls, so I assume that's the only change from the preliminary budget? Is that safe to say?
No, that was the only
There's no
change.
change.
That was the only change to the budget, and it didn't have any effect on the tax levy because it was a capital reserve withdrawal. So the expenditure came out, but so did the appropriation, the corresponding revenue for it.
Oh, right, because the other charge was the architectural fee.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions on the budget? Okay, hearing none, since this is the public budget hearing, we will open up to public for questions or concerns or comments regarding the budget only. If you wish to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Okay, if we could have the minutes reflect that there was no public comment offered. The board will be taking action on the budget as part of the balance of the superintendent's report today. It'll be adopted as part of the entire report as a whole.
I just want to thank the Finance Committee. I know I've never sat on a Finance Committee, and this is not a solicitation to do so in the future. But I know it's hard work, it's long meetings, it's tedious, but it's probably one of the most important functions that the Board of Ed does. So appreciate somebody else doing it.
Thank you, Mr. McEnone, and I will also extend my thanks as well. For the benefit of the public, the Finance Committee literally went line by line of every single item in this budget. And I'm not talking account by account, I'm talking line by line. And if you look at the budget detail, it is rather granular. So, Mrs. Bacco, Mr. Bishada, Mr. Balka as chair, thank you very much for your dedication and spending all of that time going through the budget and getting us to cap, which was no easy task.
Good job there, Dan.
Dr. Labby, back to you for the balance of your superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Sayak.
Okay, if I can bring your attention to Vision 2030 Finance and Infrastructure. There we go. Number 5, we're asking you to approve the 2017-18 school district budget. A total budget of $85,890,544, which includes a local tax levy of $60,289,602. You can find that all on pages 2 and 3. As I also mentioned earlier in my budget presentation, we're asking you to approve a resolution authorizing the DI Architectural Group to update our district's 5-year long-range facility plan. You can find that on page 3. Number 7, we're asking you to approve yourselves, as well as central administrators, to attend the New Jersey School Boards Association annual workshop in October of 2017 in Atlantic City. Numbers 8 through 11, which can be found on pages 4 and 5, are asking you to approve the 2017 Horizon Medical, CVS Caremark prescription, Delta Dental, and HealthFlex Dental insurance coverage rates. You can find all of those rates on pages 4 and 5. Numbers 13 and 14, we're asking you to accept donations for the Sam Sullivan Elementary School from the PTO there to purchase and install window blinds. By the way, those are for security purposes, and those blinds will actually be installed as part of the donation by Home Depot. As well as some t-shirts that were donated to us by Carpets and More for the high school. You can find it on page 5. Number 14, which you can also find on page 5, we're asking you to approve the 7 students that we honored this evening to attend their national, or actually international, World Championship for the Odyssey of the Mind in Michigan. We're asking you to approve that trip. You can find it on page 5. That will take place later this month. Numbers 15 and 16, as well as number 21, we have one on the addendum. We're asking you to approve approval of the tuition-related services. Actually, that's not on the addendum. We have a student that is in foster care that's being educated at our preschool. His district of residence is Newark, so we're asking you to approve a contract that we're going to ask Newark to pay for his tuition, the related services that he receives, as well as the busing services that this child receives. Okay, so that's 15, 16, and 21. You can find that on page 5. Number 17, which you can find on page 6, we're asking authorization of the sale of surplus property or property that's been declared obsolete through Gov Deals. Ms. Hill brought Gov Deals to your attention. We approved Gov Deals in general on previous motion, on previous agenda. Number 18, which can be found on page 6, we're asking you to approve a security guard substitute rate. Number 19, which can be found on page 7, we have some bid specifications for student transportation that we need you to approve. And that's for the 2017-18 school year. The good news is we don't have too many of those services being bid this year, thanks to the plan set forth by Ms. Hill and Ms. Vestano. Numbers 20 and 28, which can be found on page 7 in the addendum, we have some building permits that we need you to approve. Numbers 22 through 23, which can be found on pages 7 and 8. We're asking you to approve general and special education transportation routes at a 0% increase for the 2017-18 school year. Once again, commendations to Ms. Hill and Ms. Vestano. Number 24, which can be found on page 8, we're asking you to approve 2 board buses to be used to shuttle guests, as we normally do, from our graduation ceremony at Sayreville High School later in June, on June 22nd. Numbers 25 and 29, which can be found in the addendum, we're asking you to approve student trips with transportation costs. Actually, can be found on page 8 and 10, as well as the addendum. Number 26, we're asking you to approve 1 out-of-district contract, tuition contract. We have some commission of the blind and visually impaired services we're asking you to approve. We have an Amigo transmitter that's for a child that wears what's called an FM system. A teacher talks to a microphone. The child receives it. It's normally for children with auditory or hearing impairments. And then finally, we're asking you to approve some bedside tutoring for some unfortunate children that are right now hospitalized. You can find all that on page 10. And the last item, which can be found in the addendum, we do have one more NCL grant salary offset that we're asking you to approve. Any questions on finance or comments?
Mrs. Becca?
The T-shirts from
Yes.
Carpets and More, what are they for?
Just
Do
for
you
our
know-
students. They're just Sayreville Bomber Pride t-shirts.
So what will we do with them?
I
'Cause
believe
how
that
many-
Student activities, Mr. Brown is going to give them as incentives and so forth to our students.
Okay. And the other question, for Gov Deals, when it says number 7, the surplus property items would be disposed of if we can't sell them. Can we donate these somewhere instead of
We may
disposing
be
of them?
able to, yeah.
Because these are all books, correct?
Yes, and essentially, even if we donated, it would still be a disposal.
Okay, but we
yeah.
wouldn't just throw out the books?
No,
Okay.
no.
Any more questions?
Number 4, I'm going to abstain on, page 2.
Any other questions on finance? Okay, next.
Moving along to student achievement. We have the first 2 resolutions commending and honoring the 2016-17 Sayreville BOE High School top 10 students, which we just participated in, as well as the Middlesex County School Board and Middlesex County Association of Superintendents student recognition recipients. And then finally, numbers 3 through 5, which will be found on page 12, we do have some co-curricular activities and trips that we need you to approve.
Any questions on student achievement? Next.
Governance, we're asking you to approve the Teamsters Local 469 holiday schedule for the 2017-18 school year. You can find that on pages 12 and 13. Number 2, we're asking you to approve the April 2017 HIV report, which includes any investigations or recommendations made by me for action. You can find all of that on pages 13 and 14. Number 3, we're asking you to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Sayreville Principals Association. Find that in the addendum. And number 4, we're asking you to approve for a second and final reading the regulation 5141.21, as well as appendices to that.
Exhibits.
Exhibits, I should say, thank you. The administration of medication regulation that goes with our policy. And you can find that motion on the agenda. Any questions on Vision 2030 governance?
I'll be voting no on number 3.
Okay. Any other questions on governance? Okay, Ms. Hill, if you'd note that, and Dr. Labby, onward.
Moving along to personnel, and normally I do read something on behalf of each person that is retiring, and we do have 2 outstanding longtime members of our faculty that are retiring. We have that write-up. Unfortunately, I do not have those write-ups with me, so I will read those summaries during the May 16th Board of Education meeting. Okay? So we do have two amazing employees, Joseph Abscado, who is a school counselor at the high school, as well as Joanne Young, who is an amazing administrative assistant in our transportation department. I will be reading those summaries about them during the May 16th Board of Education meeting.
We'll have public comment as soon as this, the superintendent's report is done. We'll have public comment as soon as the report's done, okay?
Number 4 and 13 and 14, which can be found on page 15 in the addendum, we have several leave of absences for this school year as well as next school year to approve. Number 6, which can be found on page 16, we have amended class coverage rates for several teachers at the high school. We do have several mathematics teachers at the high school who are currently out on a leave of absence. They've had a very difficult time finding replacements for them. So we're asking you to approve this so that we can at least ensure that our other math teachers can get in there and provide them with the appropriate instruction. Number 7 and 8, which can be found on page 16, we have one certificated and one non-certificated substitute for you to approve. Number 9, we're asking you to approve the number 2 assistant band advisor for the 2017-18 school year. That can be found on page 16. Numbers 10 and 11, which can be found on pages 17 and 18. We have some professional days we approve. Number 12, we're asking you to approve several teachers to work at Sayreville University as presenters. You can find that on page 18. And for number 13, if you could do me a favor, it says for one of those employees, the second employee, Master Sergeant Knowlton, can you please amend that $50,000 to $60,237? One of the things mentioned earlier by Mr. Mackignone is the Air Force mandates that we pay each one of these commissioned and non-commissioned officers, Colonel Spare being the commissioned officer, Master Sergeant Knowlton being the non-commissioned officer, that we pay them what is called the minimum instructor pay. Initially, we thought the minimum instructor pay was their salary when they left, but it actually includes other things that we weren't aware of. So when you tally up those other things, his actual minimum instructor pay is $60,237. So we're asking you to approve his hiring at $60,237. And as Mr. Mackignone mentioned earlier, approximately 50% of that is going to be reimbursed to us from the Air Force. And that's it for Vision 2030 personnel. Any questions?
I'm sorry, I have another question. It's an ROTC question. When it says 11 months, is that a continual 11 months, or do we just, like, do they work a certain number in the summer
What they
for
were thinking
something?
was 2 weeks prior to the start of the school year, and then 2 weeks at the end of the school year.
Okay.
So it'd be an additional
So
month.
they would end at the second week of July, and they would begin the third week of August.
All right, so do they do certain things like on those 2 weeks with the
Yeah,
students? or-
it's revamping the curriculum, distributing uniforms to kids earlier, getting everything they need to done. And then in the summer, there's a lot of optional programs like they call Summer Leadership School, which is an in-week resident camp, those types of things. So the reason the school districts go to 11 or a 12-month contract is because if you had to pay stipends for that time, it would be much more money.
Right, so are the students involved in
Yes,
that
absolutely,
summer? So the
absolutely.
students are also
Sure,
involved in that
absolutely,
time?
yep.
Any other questions on the superintendent's report by the board? Okay, hearing none, we will open it up to public for any questions or comments on any agenda item. We'll have a separate section for public for any item concerning the district, but if it's part of Dr. Labby's report or the agenda, now would be the time to ask the question before the board votes. Yes?
I'm Sandra Check, 84 Whitehead Avenue in Sayreville, and I am just going to provide some more feedback on the medication policy.
Okay.
And I thank you, Mr. Syak, for sharing it with me so I had the opportunity to review it. I do appreciate the inclusion of the references to students with epilepsy, my daughter Jordan being one of them. My comments on page 1 in the table designated teaching and support staff receiving training from the school nurse. Given the statistics of epilepsy, that 1 in 26 people will develop epilepsy, that 2.7 million people have epilepsy, 1 in 10 people will have a seizure in their lifetime, it's pretty certain that Jordan is not the only one in over 6,000 students, and the addition of faculty and staff to that, who has had seizures. She had 2 in school the first week of April. She's had more than 50 since October, when for 6.5 years she was seizure-free prior to October. So I do not understand why the entire faculty and staff are not included in receiving education and training about the recognition and the handling of seizures. It can be offered for free from the Epilepsy Foundation of New Jersey. I have spoken to their assistant director. She will accept a phone call at any time. We just need to do it. They will come in. Yes, there is online resources, but they will come in and do face-to-face instruction. I don't understand why we won't do it. I think it is essential because, again, Jordan is not the only one. She's not. And every single person on staff and faculty understanding how to help Jordan or those like her can only benefit every single person in our district. On page 2, talking about the individual emergency health care plan being consistent with the recommendations of the physicians, I just struggle with saying it would be consistent with. I get that there could be questions, but what the doctor says is what should be done. We shouldn't be talking about consistency. It should reflect exactly what, Jordan's physicians or anybody's physician says. That's what we are expected and we need to do. On page 9, there is, in the section on addressing and supporting those with diabetes, there is a reference to posting in plain sight a reference sheet identifying signs and symptoms of hypoglycemia in students with diabetes. Epilepsy is pretty visual if someone is in the throes of a seizure. And there are products from the Epilepsy Foundation. There are posters that can depict what someone having a seizure may look like and how you can physically assist them. We should reflect that in here. Just put the things in, just like in the main office, the nurse's office, other designated locations as appropriate. The materials are there and they're available for free. And they are visual. I know I'm a visual learner, much better than an oral learner. So get them out there. A question on the actual form that would be filled out. And I do appreciate the verification of medication administration that will be done, by the medical staff. I do appreciate that. That will be a lifesaver. But on the page 4 of 7 of that form, under the authorization, I am not familiar with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act and what the difference between HIPAA and that is or are. HIPAA, we all know, is, ensures the privacy of the students and the staff's medical records, but it says that, by submitting this authorization, then HIPAA could be overruled. But I don't know what the protections are in the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So that's just a question that's unclear to me, that by signing this authorization, what are we really saying?
And Dr. Labby, you can clarify me if I'm wrong on this, but in terms of any type of student information, I mean, FERPA, the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, is actually more expansive than HIPAA, because HIPAA only deals with medical information.
Okay.
FERPA deals with any other information concerning your students. So, for example, items in an IEP, an individualized education plan,
Right.
that deal with deal with a student's education surrounding a condition such as epilepsy would not be protected under HIPAA because it's an educational plan. It is protected under FERPA.
Okay,
So it would provide
So it
for
gets folded in.
non-disclosure.
Yes.
and the protections are there.
Yes. So everything under HIPAA would be protected under FERPA. Everything under FERPA would not be protected under HIPAA.
Got it, okay. One last question. In your note to me, and in the, here, do I need to renegotiate Jordan's IEP in order for her to participate in extracurricular activities and have someone there that would be able to administer a rescue medication should she have a seizure? Is that the way I'm interpreting what you said to me?
That's something that you can either work into an independent health plan or an individualized education plan. It would be acceptable in either document, probably more appropriate in the independent health plan, but it could definitely be in both if you felt you wanted the additional protection of having it in both. But that's something that, for the independent health plan, that's something that you would talk with the nurses about. Naturally, if you wanted in the IEP, that's something you would talk with your IEP team about.
All right. Okay, that is it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
We'll just need your name and address for the record.
My name is Raghunandan Singh, and I live in 7 Vanderventer Court, Sayreville, and I have 2 children going to Wilson Elementary. I'm not sure if this is the right place to talk about it, but I gotta pick this up. My son has, I came here because, I got a letter on Saturday from the board saying that there was an incident of bullying, which they consider is not HIB.
Sir, can I interrupt you for a moment?
Sure.
Number one, this portion of the meeting is with regard to anything on the Board of Education meeting agenda. And if you're referencing, in order to protect you and your privacy and the privacy of your child, I know that you're probably referencing the HIB report.
Yes.
I would gladly speak to you in person, rather than you having to discuss this in public.
Sure.
And I don't want you to be in a situation where you might say something that
I will make sure that, the privacy of
harms your
everyone
privacy.
is protected. I just want to call a few things, and I just want the board to listen to it.
And I will say one more thing, if you just allow me to, before you go into that.
Sure.
If the nature of you speaking right now is to appeal what determination was made in the letter that you received, we have a process for that too.
Sure.
You can speak in closed session with the board at our next meeting, so again, you don't have to do that in public.
Got it.
Is that your intent to appeal, or?
It's not an intent to appeal. Honestly, this is the first time me and my children have been facing this, and I'm not sure what the process really is. My wife sent an email yesterday to
So then
Principal Davis.
if you do want to talk about this, all I ask you is that you do not mention
No.
your child's name, and
Sure.
you do not mention any other child's name.
Sure. No, I won't be mentioning any child's name. I would just say, so we got this letter on Saturday. We've been disturbed last 6 months because of some incidents that have been happening in the school. The first incident, I will not reference it, but my son was hit in the eye, and he had a bloody eye in the school. The nurse called us, and the aftercare teacher called us and saying that, they're concerned about, what's going on. And we found out that he was hit by another child, and which was confirmed by the teacher who was present at that time. Considering, and we were asked that, do you want to report this to the board? Considering that it's just a child, and, we don't want to jeopardize any child's future, right? why would anyone want to do that? We said, okay, it might be an isolated incident. So HIB is harassment, intimidation, bullying. I never really went through all this before this happened to my son. And my wife went through it in details, and well, we have 2 elementary school children at home, so she can't join us today. So kicking, my son has been kicked on numerous occasions, being called stupid and dummy in front of other children on numerous occasions. He was hit in the eye, and this is just the same child doing it. And when we really lost it was when this child pulled my son's shirt up in front of all the children in a class. And the teacher stopped him, teacher tried to get him on the side. And that's when we wanted to draw the line that, no, we will not tolerate it. And we get this letter saying that this is not an HIB. I don't know what is HIB. I mean, you can help me with that. But if this is not HIB, I'm surprised. My son is a minority. You can see I'm a minority. And my son is obese. And I don't know why my son has to go through this. He's an innocent 7-year-old. We're talking about a 7-year-old child. We don't want him to go through this. He wakes up in the night crying, screaming in dreams. We don't want him to witness all this situation at this age, right? We want to protect him. And we really have faith in you, Dr. Labby, and the system. And that's why we are going through the system to find out what we need to do. What's our mistake? What is our fault? Right? And the reason I came here, I had a full day at work. I had no intentions of coming here. I have a lot of other things to do. But if I don't do it now, my son is going to keep going through this problem for next 6 months. And I don't want him to have lasting, effects of this on his psychology. This is harassment, this is intimidation, this is bullying, according to me. And there's been not one, there's numerous incidents, and we have witnesses. I mean, I don't want to go, honestly, I don't know what the process is, but I want this to stop, right? So that's why I wanted to call the attention of the board on this, and, think about it, please.
So in terms of the process, I would encourage you first to speak to Dr. Labby following this meeting.
Sure.
We're not going to be too much longer, or you can call him certainly tomorrow to discuss the matter further.
Sure.
And then there is also an appeal process where you can appeal the decision and the determination directly to the Board of Education, and we would meet in a closed meeting without the public to discuss the specific circumstances where you'll have an opportunity to share all of the details that you wish to share regarding the determination.
I appreciate it. And the reason I'm really shocked is this was not classified as HIB, right? I got this letter, I didn't want this to be flushed down the drain, having the approval of the board that, okay, this is not an HIB, right? And that's why I wanted to be here. I want to make sure, because my wife sent an email to to Principal Davis and CC'd you. I'm sure there's 1,000 other things going on, but I didn't want this to be a closed case, right?
The other thing, too, to keep in mind is even though something is not characterized as HIB, because that definition is very specific, and I'm not going to comment specifically on this case, but oftentimes, just because something is not an HIB incident does not mean that it is accepted and tolerated, and there are disciplinary consequences for the action to the student who perpetrated it. It's just not classified as an HIB event because it doesn't meet the definition. But Dr. Labby could take you through your event specifically in more detail and provide some more specifics regarding it with you.
Okay.
And then you can work together to, in particular, to make sure your son feels safe.
If you feel that strongly, I really do recommend that you come to a hearing. You have a hearing with the board.
Sure.
Where you get a chance to
because
be a little bit more
I'm here
factual.
just because I did not see any response from Principal Davis. I didn't know what to do. If she had told me, this is the process that we need to follow, she could have called me or my wife. I would not have been here. And it is harassment. It is bullying. It is intimidation. If my son is going through trauma, it is intimidation, it is bullying. It's even worse than that. It's a crime, right? I don't want to go too far, but this has to stop. This really has to stop. And thank you for your time, everyone.
We can talk after the meeting if you still want to.
As I said, please speak with Dr. Labby because we want your child to feel safe in the district.
Got it. Thank you.
Anyone else for public? Mrs. Kilcummins.
Barbara Kilcummins, 22 Schmidt Street. I guess you probably know that I'm extremely critical of budgets downtown, but I am not critical of budgets for our school system. I firmly believe in education, and I don't mind spending a dime on the children of our town. Keeping a good school system helps my property values, so that's the reason I'm for it, Dr. Labby. Second of all, I want to thank Mr. Brown and his staff, or the vice principals, for the sign. And the community also would like to thank him because of all the feedback I've been getting, of all the information that has been provided. Coaches of the year, teachers of the year, students and whatnot. And also, we can read it. It stays on long enough. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kilcummins. Anyone else for public? All right, we'll close public at this time, and I'll take a motion to approve the superintendent's report.
So moved.
Second.
By Mr. McEnone, second by Mrs. Bloom. Any remarks or comments on the superintendent's report? Okay, hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Bauka?
Yes, with items noted.
Mrs. Bacco?
I'll be voting no on the addendum C3.
All others, yes?
All others, yes.
Mr. Bashada?
I'll be voting no on Vision C 2030, item number 3, and the rest will be yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
I am required to abstain on Governance 3 on the addendum, and on everything else, yes.
Mrs. DePinto? Yes. Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. McAgnoon?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes. Okay, moving on. We have our committee reports. Vision 2030 Finance.
No report. I have a list of stuff in the budget, but it was covered, so I'm good.
Good report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good report.
Infrastructure.
No report, but on the May 16th at 6 p.m., we will have our meeting here in the conference room here, and we'll have results then.
Good
Got it.
report. Good report.
Vision 2030 Student Achievement.
We did meet. We spoke about the summer reading program. The middle school program this year will be one book per grade level. Brochures will go home with the students, and they will also be available on the website. There will be 6 titles to choose from. The K through 5 will be staying the same, and the high school they're still working on. We spoke about the grade 8 math proposal. Grade 8 will now become pre-algebra, high school algebra 1. High school will become algebra 1 as 9th graders. It will be a much more successful end of 9th grade year. We then spoke about a pen pal system that Dr. Labby's Let the Children Lead representative brought up. It would be sharing letters electronically with a partner school. We talked about maybe sharing information with foreign countries, or maybe foreign speaking or English to English. That you were going to bring it to Ms. Gentile, correct? And we thought maybe then it could develop into something with the Tamberg system where maybe they could take field trips. So we thought it could develop into something really useful for the kids. We then talked about the school report card, the performance reports. The elementary, we didn't see a huge difference. The LA language arts and math, except for Truman, had an improvement. The UES, 5th grade had an improvement. 4th grade, there really wasn't much improvement from last year. High school, we saw some math concern. 23% met, compared as to 40% for the state. So we saw a concern for math in the high school. We may need to wait another year to see results as we have new initiatives in place. We may have a better picture of the 8th grade as they take Algebra 1. We did see that we were doing better than the state average in the AP test scores, so we saw that there really was no harm in making them take the AP tests. So that was a big thing we did see. And that's about it.
Okay, were we able, and so we're not able to really pin down the math score drop in any, I guess, what would be the next step? Because I don't know if I want to wait 2 or 3 years to see if it goes down further. Are we able to maybe look at some of the specific standards that students are?
I think there's two things. First and foremost, we changed our continuum. So you have kids at the high school who are being compared to kids that are taking Algebra 1B, when the previous year you had the majority of the kids taking Algebra 1B at the high school. This past year was different because of that continuum shift. Likewise, the kids in 8th grade who were taking algebra, the algebra assessment, okay? It was a small group of students, our highest achieving students the previous year. Now, the last year, the tested year last year, the 2015-16 school year, it was 85% of those kids. So in 14-15, it was just about 10% of those kids, the highest achieving kids, who took the Algebra 1 assessment. Last year, it was about 85% of all of our students. So think about our highest achieving students. They're all going to score much better than the general 85% of our students. So I think this year, now that we have our new continuum in place, you're going to be comparing those 85% with the 85% last year, if that makes sense to you.
That does make sense, but I guess now what I'm wondering is if we look at the data, I always assume that 100% of the students were taking the assessment. Is that an unfair assumption?
It did,
what you just said didn't sound like that.
In 14-15, okay, the Algebra 1 test was given to about 10 to 15% of our 8th grade students. The rest of our 8th grade students took the Park 8 assessment.
And that was statewide, or that was just Sayreville?
No, that was just Sayreville, okay? Last year, about 15% of our kids took geometry, and then 85% of them took algebra. And then we had about 10 to 15% take the Park 8. So you're comparing the general population of students with the highest achieving students the previous year.
Got it.
That's what happened with the algebra in the middle school. Now you fast forward to the high school, and it's almost the same issue, because there was a smaller percentage of there's a large percentage of kids in 14-15 that took the algebra test. And then last year, it was a very small percentage of kids that took the algebra test in 9th grade. Only about 15% of our lowest students. So 15% of our lowest students are being compared to 85% of our average students from 2014-15.
It's not synced.
It wasn't synced. So I think that was a great part of the problem. We did have some time changes. We have the blocks now.
Well, that's the other thing I'm wondering is how that factors in.
And so forth. But I honestly believe that this next year will begin to tell the story in terms of where we're going in mathematics. We've also incorporated a number of different new techniques and strategies, and we're building it through the elementary school. Mr. Pinto mentioned the fact that all of our elementary third graders, they improved in mathematics, according to that. And our fourth graders actually improved if you compared their performance in third grade to fourth grade. Our fifth grade students improved the most in the district from their fourth grade scores to their fifth grade scores. So we're putting a lot in place in our lower grades so that it trickles up to our higher grades. And we do have our kids, and we're challenging our kids in that more rigorous continuum. So I honestly believe, and Dr. Shediak, you can jump in if you want, that this next year we'll be comparing apples to apples.
It's 2030
We'll get a better
next
picture.
year, man. This is the 2030 thing. Because you're looking at the elementary school
Correct.
kids now, moving up that chain.
Yes. Okay, and look, my concern was, and you hit it, when we've done a lot of changes right at that level, I just want to make sure that, the changes that we're implementing aren't causing any type of issue. But I understand where you're coming from in terms of
Next year,
the continuity.
And then you're going to see even more byproducts of that. I mean, you're going to see, with this new continuum shift, you're going to see more kids in advanced mathematics classes.
Right.
And that's part of Vision 2030. We talked about that. And more so, you're going to see more kids completing algebra by the time they're done, middle school. And, if you're looking at the job market now, As important as it is to be able to read, it's becoming as important to be able to perform algebra by the time you graduate. So if the majority of our kids are completing algebra by middle school, think of how much more we can do with them.
When they get to high school.
And one of the things that we talked about, and one of the things that I would like to see happen eventually, and I don't mind bringing it up right now, is I would like to see the requirement of 4 years of mathematics. We require all of our students to take
I vote for that.
4 years of language arts. Now, I know the Department of Education doesn't require 4 years of mathematics, but let's face it, STEM is a major component of the job market, and it's growing more and more important, and it's part of our Vision 2030. I'd like to see all of our students having to take 4 years of mathematics. So if you're completing Algebra 1 as an 8th grader, think of the coursework that all of our students will do in the next 4 years in high school.
All right, well, listen, I think that's something that you should discuss with the Student Achievement Committee, and,
We've had discussion.
I mean, is there,
I
I
think
can-
one of the things, if we do that, though, is I think we need to have other course selections
Yeah,
in order to do
we
that.
will.
Because I don't think that we could accomplish that with what we offer now.
There's a lot of different math courses you could add.
Right, but I think despite the fact that a lot of the students will be taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade, they might not all be students that will be able to take calculus.
And one of the things that-
Calculus and stuff like that, so I think we need to broaden our math spectrum.
And Dr. Trevisano, I mean, I can't say enough about him. He's always working one step ahead, and he's already, discussing with us a trigonometry class that is a step before pre-cal. So, again, another avenue for our kids to go, so that they can complete 4 years of mathematics.
Because one of the other things we discussed too, which was my concern, was the blocking of math in the middle school. Do we know that that's helping or not helping, and how can we possibly measure that? We talked about the looping. There's you could probably get, like, there are other ways they're looking at measuring that, but the math one is not as easy to pinpoint.
Right.
Especially when you made so many changes at once.
at once?
But I know you did ask about looking at these by the board. I don't know if you're still looking to do that, or,
That's up to the board, I mean.
right, 'cause-
And one of the things, I guess, that Mrs. Bacco, I can't remember if it was you or Mrs. DePinto, we talked about is each one of us, I think, has a school that we are the PTA liaison for, or PTO liaison. Maybe that should also be the school that we have each one of us deep dive in terms of the school report card. This way, you not only own the relationships, you own the academics as well.
Well, I think that's why we have a curriculum committee, to tell you the truth.
Again, that's up to the board, so,
I know, despite whether we have a school or not, though, there was one thing that concerned me, that stood out, and we discussed it at the curriculum meeting. If you look at the graduation rate in the high school, and I know that's not my school, but I was looking at that, and we had talked about it, where our school rate is 90.7%, but our statewide percentile is only 37%, so we are quite low in our percentile for
Can you
graduation
explain that?
rate.
I didn't understand that.
If you looked at the school report card on the graduation rate.
Right.
Okay, our school graduation rate is 90.7%.
Okay.
But our statewide percentile is 37%, and the state target is 81. So I had asked if there was some sort of way we can determine where that 37 came from and how they determined it. So Dr. Shediak did send like a 40-page document or whatever. So I looked at that on how this is compiled. But there were, in that document, the specifics on how they actually calculated the 37 and how we compared it was not in that 40 pages. So I want to know if we can get some more information on where they calculate the 37. I don't know, are they telling us that 90.7 is not a good number? So I don't know. So what I did was I looked at some of the other schools in the area, just in this county. So I looked at, say, like East Brunswick, they had an 84 number. But then I looked at North Brunswick and they were 26. So I just look at it from a parent perspective, or like we talked about, people use these report cards when they move into towns or whatever. So I think if I wanted to move into North Brunswick and I saw that 26, that would concern me, as this 37 would if I saw Sayreville. But I don't know that I have a grasp on why Edison is a 90 and we're a 37.
And what was their percentage?
Who?
What was their percentage graduation?
Edison?
Yeah.
Edison, their graduation was 97.7. There was a correlation.
97.7% of their kids
Right,
graduate.
so as the school rate went up, their percentile went up.
Right,
If
right.
the school rate went down. So that all made sense in the way it worked. But I'm not saying that other, some people did, well, North Brunswick didn't do as good. Most of the other ones were higher. But I don't know if that 37 number is, I mean, I look at it from someone that would just go look at the school report cards. If you were a parent and want to look at it, gee, that doesn't look good to me. So I'd like to have a better understanding
But
what that
that
means.
number is misleading. When you say 90%, you're saying that if we have 400 students in grade 12, 40 of them are not graduating? That's not...
No, our graduation rate is 90.7.
What is that?
But then they're comparing us to the state.
So they're saying that we're in the 37th
Percentile,
percentile.
right.
So 90% of graduation rate equates to the 37th percentile.
Right, and
which
that-
means 63% of the districts in the state do better than we do.
Right, so that to me seems like a
But
problem.
that makes no sense.
Yeah, but it doesn't tell you much. It could be 1%, you know what I'm saying? Like 50 of those districts could be, if we're at 37, they could be at 38. I mean, it's not giving you a good
That is a good
description
point.
as to.
Could be 91%, yeah.
Yeah, the
Right.
difference between the 37th percentile and the 80th percentile could be 0.4
Right,
percentage
that's
points.
fine, yes, I get that.
But you
So
wanna know
I
that.
Yes, I want to know that.
Yeah.
I want to
Which
know
I
how
think is
that
fair.
37 came about, and is it something that we really need to focus on to improve, or is 90.7 a good number? And it is, it's so minute, the differences. But when I look at, say, like Edison, and they're at 90, or East Brunswick that's 84, that's a big difference. But like the same thing with the top 10, you'll have, a tiny
Well-
proportion.
Well, we know the difference between 84 and 37 is 7%. So there's not a wide spectrum between, right, because you said that East Brunswick was 97?
84.
No, but what was their
That is
graduation rate?
East Brunswick graduation rate was 97.2.
Was
Right, so it's
97.2,
like
we're
7.
90.
Right.
So there's 7%
Right.
between the 84 and the 37, that's a, 7% for 50, from 80 to 30, so 50%, like, you know what I mean?
Well, see,
That
that's
50% is a small,
Right, but there was no details in
But,
that document
see,
you sent me, so I'd
but
like to know.
The confusion
where
is
that-
when we say 90% graduation rate, that's not saying that 10% of your kids in the 12th grade is not graduating in June. Does everybody understand that? They're following a group of kids that came into the school in 9th grade. They could have left the district. They could have came from another district and then went, I mean, it's typical State Department of Education nonsense.
Right, but I
Okay?
think, I want to understand that number, like,
Phyllis, what I want to know
90%.
is if I have 400 kids in the graduating class, do I have 399 graduating? That's good. That's what I need to know. I don't need to know about the kid that came to us as a 9th grader that's no longer in the district anymore, but still counts to us because he started here, and then he went to another school and didn't graduate.
But you're making an assumption that that's what's driving us
Right,
being in
and
the
I don't
37th
know.
What else could
percentile.
it be?
Well, I want to know what it is, that's the thing, I want to know. I want to know, is this 90 point something that we really need to
This
start
is why you
focusing
don't need
on?
the Department of
Maybe that's-
Education.
Maybe it's something we
It's
need
a-
to focus on bringing it
Look,
up.
educated people, school boards of education, look at that data, and we don't know what it is, but we have realtors sharing that with people they're selling homes to. That's the problem.
Right, so I think we should understand it. I think,
It's
I
just,
want to
just because
understand
you're in
what that
education
number is.
doesn't mean you're smart. I mean, it's just ridiculous. When NJSBA, National School Board, speak to the Department of Education and ask them this.
Well, I'm not going to speak to the Department of Education until I understand our own data.
Well, how many kids do we have graduating in June?
Well, first of all, this is for last year.
I know.
So this would have been last year.
But why do we care, or anybody care, the kid that came to us in 9th grade that may no longer be with us graduated high school? Why does that count against us? Because he started here in the 9th grade. That's the skewed data.
Right, but don't you want to know what's driving this number to see if there's something
Yeah,
we can
the
improve
other-
on
the other
to fix it?
You're assuming that mobility is what's driving it.
Well-
It may not be.
Well,
What
but hold
class
on
are
though,
they
because
good
the other side of that, there's two measurements on that page. There is the graduation rate, and the graduation rate calculates the kids in cohorts. Okay, you have to finish high school in 4 years. If you do not finish with your cohort, so a student, if he started in Linden in a certain year, and he comes to Sayreville, and he doesn't graduate in 4 years, it doesn't hurt Linden, it hurts Sayreville. Okay, so that child may graduate after the summer. So the child may, in August, may have earned his credits or her credits to graduate. It still hurts us in the graduation. That counts as a child not graduating. That lowers our graduation rate. The other measurement that you should look at is our dropout rate, okay, which is very low. And we do rank very good in our dropout rate. So our kids are not dropping out, so I don't want the public or anybody to think that we have a dropout issue, because we do not. What we have with that graduation rate is, that is the percentage of kids that started in their cohort, and it took them exactly. If it took a child the summer to get the credits that they need to graduate, then they don't count within that graduation rate. And one of the things that Dr. Shediak and I were just talking about, there are cases in which you have kids that come over and they don't have the credits. They come in, they don't have the credits. So we've got to catch them up real fast, because it's going to hurt our graduation rate, not where they came from. And that's one of the things we talked about too.
Right, and
we
we
want to
did,
know,
yes.
where does that line of responsibility lie? Like, is there a percentage of time in another district that it counts toward them and not toward us? We don't know that either. For all we know, the child spends 1 year here, they're attributed to our graduation rate.
Right, and I understood all of that, but I want to know if we could go into that data and determine what's driving that number.
Phyllis,
That's what I want to know.
Phyllis, the Department of Education puts out these school report cards. They put an important piece of data that everybody's looking at, and then they send out a 40-page instruction book that doesn't address that piece.
Right, and I looked through that instruction booklet, and I couldn't find
Well, yeah, I am
anything
worried
else.
about it, because it's a statistic that we don't understand.
Well, it's not even in their instructions.
Well, then maybe we need to call somebody at the Department of Ed and find out, I mean, somebody's got to know how this is calculated. And look, if it is students who are coming in ninth grade and leaving halfway through, and they're in our number, well, there's not much we as a board can do about that.
Right.
However, if they're coming in ninth grade, and even if they're leaving after their junior year, and they're still not graduating in 4 years in a Linden or wherever they're going, we've had them for the bulk of that time. We've provided them with the bulk of that high school education. There's a certain amount of responsibility that we bear there. Likewise, if somebody comes in the middle of ninth grade and graduates 12th grade or doesn't make it at 12th grade and has to go to the summer and doesn't count towards that statistic, we own that. But right now, we don't know what's driving that number.
We don't understand the number.
Well, that's what we need to do
driving it.
sometimes. We don't know what it means.
If we can get more
Yeah,
details
yes,
or more
and I
data
can-
on
I
how
can get
these
you
numbers are
more
driven.
detail about that.
Send us another
Okay.
40-page instruction.
No, I will get data specific to our school, okay?
Right, there has to be more
Every
data.
year, Donna Sokola, there is a report that the state puts out, and we have an opportunity, and Donna Sokola works on it, to track students that they don't have records for. So we're able to figure out a lot of that, okay? So I will have information for you.
How many students do we have in the 12th grade class?
I don't have an exact number.
I think
mean,
I'm
it's
signing
probably-
410 diplomas this year.
Right, I was going to say it's about 415, something.
Okay, so
right.
we got a pretty good graduation.
Yes, but, you
That's
know.
that's not what the people see.
But there's
That's
a
the
lot of
problem. But that's what
factors that go
matters.
into it. When a special education student does not graduate in 4 years, that counts against our graduation rate. There's many factors. We sometimes have students who come in from out of the country in the middle of the school year not speaking any English or not having been in school.
They're not graduating in 4 years.
They're not.
Right,
here's
no,
what
but
this-
see, and we talked about this, and this
Right.
is where I have a math problem, and that's why I want to know the details, because we talked about the students with disabilities, and if you looked at the state percentile on here, our students with disabilities are at 54. So they actually have a higher number, so there's something driving that. I'm not saying these numbers are good or bad, I'm saying I don't understand the
Correct.
correlation.
Okay, and I will-
And that's what I want to know,
Okay.
like why it just doesn't, there's something in here that's driving this, and I want to know what it is.
Okay.
And just for everybody, the dropout rate, our school rate is 0.2% and the state is 1.2, just so you know, our dropout rate is, we're okay with our
Right,
dropout
we're
rate, so
good with that, right.
give you the data.
And this is
And I
exactly,
just want to say again, too, just like I said before, I
They're
mean,
not dropping out
there's
when they
obviously a
graduate.
lot of those numbers bunched together in, like I said, a 7%, from 97 to 90 is a 47% difference on the
Right.
other side. So, I mean, you know, because when you say 37%, I mean, it seems low, but you're not far from being, you know, in the top of that either. You know, I mean,
You
there's
have
a-
to understand the balance of the numbers, so that's
Right,
what we need
that's,
to do.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, is it, if we have 2 more students graduate, are we going to go up to the 70 or 80th percentile? That's what I want to know.
We might, okay.
But I just want to be careful too, not to I want to understand the numbers also, I agree with you guys, but I don't want to let the numbers dictate good thing, you know, if we're doing great work in special ed and it's hurting our number because kids are going a little longer, well, so what? We're doing the right thing, we're
If
educating
you look
kids.
at this, the special ed numbers
I
are
know,
not
I'm just using it as an
driving it.
example,
Right.
or a kid who came here from another country and we worked a little harder with him and it took him an extra year. Well, we did a good job with that kid, we educated him. I don't want these numbers to drive, I want to understand them, I agree, but I don't want to let a number drive us that really has no
There's too
bearing
many
on
things that
quality
are out of,
education.
too many things that are out of our control.
And you know what, you raise a good point too, because this is the 4-year rate. Well, maybe, you know, again, because of the students that we have, we've got a 5-year graduation rate that's much higher than the other schools that we're being compared to.
Right.
Don't
I mean,
know.
obviously, we're a different town than East Brunswick in a lot of towns. We get a lot of people who move here from different countries. We get a lot of people who move here to get a good education, you know, but in a different way than other places. You know, we're a more multicultural district in a lot of places.
And-
I think that's a good thing.
And another measure, something you have to look at is, every one of our students this year has met their graduation testing requirement. So, you know, I mean, that's another,
That's a good percentage.
that's a really good percentage, that they've met the state standards
That's what matters.
for the assessment
what matters.
in order to graduate.
That's
Not a
what
whole
matters.
lot of districts can say that.
That's
know,
what matters.
So, I mean, I think that's some more proof that we're doing a good job here.
And again, I don't, right, exactly. I don't think our intent is to say
Unfortunately,
we're
it's not
not doing a
reflected
good
here.
job. We've got a
Right.
statistic that says 63% of the districts are doing better than we are with regard to graduation rate. And we want to understand what goes into that number.
This is a whole new report this year. I mean, and I think that's why there's a lot of questions about it. As administrators, we have a lot of questions about it. It's a very different way of reporting than what
We have a
we've done
very
in the
low
past.
dropout rate, we have a 90% graduation, what's happening?
Well, that's
They're not dropping out,
kind of
they're
what
not
we're asking. And look, this is the type of discussion, and Mrs. Backo, thank you, because you go through the report card, one board member per school, this is the type of discussion that you get, that I didn't get from the Student Achievement Committee's report, because they're looking at all the schools.
Well, on the front, it says if you have any questions regarding it, there's a email. Can't we email them and ask them?
Yeah, and they send you
Yes.
40-page instructions.
We
That
have.
doesn't answer my question.
So they
Okay, can't we email them with the question and ask
Yeah,
them
yes,
what drives that number?
Right. So I
I
think-
will get you answers.
I would say, I think Dr. Shediak's going to have an in-depth analysis for us as to what this statistic means for our next meeting. And
I
Mrs.
plan to,
Backo,
yes.
I will follow your lead, and I will do Wilson School for the next meeting, since that's my school.
The only, well, I just looked at the high school. The only concern I had, I know you talked about each school. I don't know if someone might want to look at elementary, like as opposed to looking at each elementary school, since we don't have a total elementary picture. They just do it by schools. We don't really have something like that. So I don't know if looking at an individual elementary school might give a good answer.
I'll take a school
We
without a
might-
graduation
I
rate.
think the data on the Department of Ed website is in spreadsheet form, and it contains one line for all elementaries. Is
Oh,
that
does it?
true?
I don't know. I didn't.
You have to
I'm not sure if it's, I know it's for the test data, I'm not sure if it's for the school report
For
card.
testing data, yes, I do not believe for this new performance report, it's reported that way.
It's 9:35. Just,
Okay.
you know, we-
Yeah, but you know what, Mr. McEnroe, we spent 35 minutes on student achievement, so I think that's 35 minutes well spent.
I would like to spend 3 hours on student achievement.
Then we got to start earlier.
Past your bedtime.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we've taken care of student achievement policy, we covered, we approved the medication policy, personnel, Mr. Walsh.
We had a meeting earlier today, we discussed our 2 officers that are being hired for the ROTC program, and we also discussed the coverage for our math teachers. A little difficulty getting some good math applicants, but we have some people who are going to cover classes, our current math teachers.
Actually, I think I saw that in
Yeah, we
the highlights
today,
or somewhere, I saw
yeah,
that, yes.
today.
Okay.
Good report, Mr. Walsh. Excellent.
Any other items of board business?
Yes, I
for
have one
discussion.
response from, I'm sorry, Tom, from the Climate and Culture. Remember that I had
Yes.
said supervisors got back to me, the custodians, maintenance, and the principals did not. I received a correspondence from Dr. Aguiles saying that he had spoken to Ms. Batco, that he was the only one who had filled out a survey, and he didn't feel that that would be of value, and that the principals and the vice principals don't feel that anything positive will come of their responses, and felt that they would rather keep their opinions to themselves. I found that rather disconcerting.
I wish I would have had that about a week ago,
So
Tony.
I asked Dr. Aguiles if he would try again. He said he tried twice, maybe the third time would be the charm.
You fixed that.
I still have not heard from him, but I think the fact that our principals and vice principals don't think that their sharing information with us would come out to a good result is very, very frustrating, to say the least. So I share that with you.
All right, we can
And I'll
only,
wait on a happy
I say we
note.
can only act on what we
On a
what we
happy
receive,
note, we have a
unfortunately.
celebrity in our district, folks, cover boy, and first page of the New Jersey School Board Association notes, and this is the school leaders. So Mr. Syak, who is the national president of school boards now, is also a
I
celebrity.
have that on my nightstand.
Cover boy.
I'm sure you do, Mr.
Actually, I
McEnroe.
made a nice little dartboard.
I'm not giving him another ovation.
Dartboard?
No,
I
no more
appreciate it
ovations.
too.
No more ovations.
I toasted him last Saturday, that was it.
But,
I'm
and
very
Mrs.
proud of
Cook-Cummins, I did contact Mr. Beluccio from New Jersey School Boards, and he is working on the press highlights that you have requested. Got that in the works.
Could I just reply to Lucy?
Yes, and then
All right,
Mr. Machado had something.
I did, Mr. Aguiles did mention that to me. It was,
Well,
you
he
know,
put that in
just
his note that he had
he
spoken
mentioned
to
it
you.
at the Healthcare Committee because Mr. Gentile was talking about it. And just as a follow-up, because you mentioned about the budget process with the supervisors, that they had, like, when you had read at the last meeting.
Okay, the
About how the
letters.
budget process had changed and how they had done that. So I did speak to Mr. Gentile about that, because I remember that process very well. And Dr. Labby had changed that process somewhat when he came, and he brought it, they now make these presentations to the public. So I had spoke to Mr. Gentile that that's the difference between the way we used to do it. But in speaking to him, one of the things that came out of the way we used to do the budget process, when all the supervisors sat together with the budget committee in the room, and the funny thing was, talking to Mr. Gentile made really good sense, because he's kind of entertaining, let's say. So in the budget process, we had talked about, say, specifics. When you have all of the supervisors sitting there in a room, and say they all talk about their textbooks or that, about that, there is a very good exchange, and this is a conversation I had with Mr. Gentile. They felt like, and Mrs. Sokola was sitting there at the time, the exchange of dialogue amongst themselves was very beneficial in that process. And we joked about it because at one meeting, and you know how Frank is with people, how he picks on people, well, we had talked about, I remember this one specific budget meeting, we talked about textbooks, and the supervisors were going back and forth about who wanted this textbooks and want that. And Mr. Gentile was sitting there and says, well, what about my textbooks? Where's my textbooks? And Dr. Alfano turned around and said, well, if you want textbooks, you needed to put them in the budget. So the thing that came out of it was, without that conversation, Mr. Gentile wouldn't have known his textbooks weren't in the budget. He had thought somebody else had put them in for him. So that was kind of how, like, they looked at each other's, and I know each group is different, but I understand where the supervisors were coming from. They used to have a very good exchange of dialogue amongst themselves. And, you know, when they talked about, they all had, a lot of them would bring new initiatives, like, say, a reading series or a science series or math series. And granted, there's always where you can't do everything. So the exchange amongst themselves, when you know you can't do it all, was very beneficial, because they actually felt that they were part of the decision of what to cut, which is where he was coming from in that comment where cuts are being made for them. So I kind of felt a little, being on the finance committee all these years, like, I didn't want him to think that, oh, well, we just arbitrarily cut your budgets because the process had changed. But that was something that was, and I understood the point of view, what he was trying to say with how the budget cuts work. By them talking it out together, they felt more collaborative and more part of the decision in the cuts. So, just as a follow-up.
And they do all that.
Because I thought that one was a very good comment.
They do all that with Dr. Shediak.
They do that with her.
They do that with her. And then it goes up through the budget process in that manner.
Well,
So the
and I
collaboration
guess,
is still
like,
there.
Well, see, and this is where, like, I could take issue here, because I don't want to be sensitive about people's comments on, we asked for this, so I'm taking it to heart at what he said and why he said it, and that's why I had a conversation with him. And obviously, they made this comment that they don't feel part of that process, so they made it. So I wanted to find out why and where that came from and what had changed. So if you think this is taking place, I don't think they would have made that comment if they felt that way. So that was just my research.
And and again, I'm only reading what I heard Mrs. Bloom read at the last meeting,
right,
but
and that's what I-
my take on the comment wasn't that it was an administrative issue, it was that, the budget is, developed by the supervisors, by the administration, presented to the board, and then the board's got to take a budget and get it down to whatever
Right.
amount, and that's where the involvement seems to stop. That was what and again, that might not have been the intent, but that was what I took from it. And again, I didn't take it as a critique, I just took it as there's an opportunity for better collaboration
Right.
once the board gets involved with the budget.
Right, and that's why I think Mr. Gentile was comparing the process the way it used to be versus the way it was now, and I think they felt they had a more collaborative
Well, and his
process.
final statement was allow the supervisors to prioritize their
Right.
requests at this meeting. So
Right.
this way, if they felt that they had prioritized, then we would know
Right.
what we could least get rid of.
Right, and that's what they used to do when they sat in a room together, and that's, I think, where Mr. Gentile is coming from.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Bishada, you had something?
Mr. McEnone, you're on
Yeah,
the planning
yeah.
board.
Yeah.
What is going on with the planning board asking for 2,000 more housing units in this town? There's a COA, excuse me, let me
I have no
finish.
idea what you're talking
Let me
about.
finish, please.
I don't know what you're talking about.
COA required, I think, 760-some, 750-something, somewhere in that range there.
770.
And Mr. Diadio, who's on Sarah, stepped into the meeting that was televised, because I couldn't attend it, and said that he doesn't want any more kids in the school system. What is going on?
I don't recall, well, first of all, this is a Board of Education meeting, not a planning board meeting. Our planning board meeting is tomorrow evening, where I will entertain all questions about the planning board. I don't remember Mr. Diadio being at any planning board meeting in the
No,
last...
this was a council meeting.
Oh,
but he
council, I
showed
didn't
up.
go to a council
But
meeting.
the reason I ask this is because we have we're going to be overcrowded very shortly. The Point's coming in with 2,000 housing units there, which is
Well-
at 1,684 extra bedrooms.
I don't know
will
if
be in
during
there.
my lifetime we're going to see that, but...
Well-
You talk about the school board planning meeting where a prior chairman of the planning board came and shot off his mouth about the planning board approving COA. COA is by the state. This COA told us, Sayreville, what our numbers are. I don't know what he's talking about. I have no
And
idea.
all of a sudden, there's all this mysterious property here in town to build on, according to what he had said and the mayor even said it, that there's extra properties here in town that developments can be built on.
The property they're referring to is the property that's adjacent to North Ernston Road that goes between where Kennedy Park, behind Kennedy Park up to where Lakeview is and out to Main Street, which is owned
By Kaplan.
Yeah, and then you have the Mako property on Main Street.
Which they can't build on, they have to build warehouses,
Well,
because
that's
Conrail won't,
topic of discussion at tomorrow's planning board meeting.
well, DuPont won't give them the easement rights, and neither will Conrail.
I know. So I don't know your initial accusation is about, to tell you the truth.
But it's in the newspaper, that's the reason I asked.
Well, it doesn't mean that that's accurate.
I mean, this town, see, people don't realize that you can bring all this development in here, and the taxpayers have to pay for the new schools, for the staffing, for everything, and the developer gets away scot-free.
Well, years ago, when this town took certain parcels of land and they zoned it for residential, now the developers want to build residential, so what are you going to do? Deny it, and you go to court?
There's over $5 million in a
Open space?
preservation fund that sits there and nobody does anything with it.
You're talking to
I
the
mean,
wrong
it's-
board.
Well, I understand. I'm just letting the public know that this money sits there, and it can be used to purchase property
I agree.
for the green acres that no development can come in.
Open space.
Because if you look at the traffic jam on Washington Road, Main Street in the morning, the evenings, I mean, Route 35 and 9 combination, Bordentown Avenue, I mean, there's no infrastructure to support this.
Nothing you're going to say I'm going to disagree with. I agree with you.
But I can't understand how this article was written in the paper where the planning board is saying that we need 2,000 more housing units.
Well, you never heard that from my mouth. I've been a strong, staunch advocate of not building residents in town. But the problem is, when something's zoned residential, somebody wants to build houses there, how do you stop them?
Well, I would ask that, would you please keep the board
Sure.
up to date on what's going on with developments in this town?
Absolutely. Planning board meeting's open to the public, 7:30 tomorrow night.
Will they discuss, they had said there was, they were going back to court May 1st. Will they discuss that at the planning board meeting tomorrow?
I
the
don't know if it's
results, or
going to
will
be a
that-
closed session or if it's going to be an open session, but the topic of discussion is going to be that was so-called the Mako property on Main Street, and what's going to happen with that.
The Mako property where?
On Main Street, across from Main Street homes, Towns Homes, you know, the sand pits.
White Oaks.
Yeah.
Where White Oaks ends.
Okay, so that's the topic of conversation. Does Larry Sachs, will he come to the planning board meeting and brief you on what happened in court, or does that only happen at the council meeting?
Well, that happens in closed session with the planning board until,
Oh,
you know.
because he did it in public at the
Right.
council meeting.
right, yeah, he came to the council meeting and explained it, yeah.
Okay.
But Larry Sachs, as you know, is not the planning board
Right,
attorney.
but I
He's
didn't know,
just
will he
representing us
be
on the,
but
he
he
had the
will
COA
attend?
piece.
He will
Larry
be.
Sachs had the COA piece.
Okay, but he'll be at the planning board meeting?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't
He's
know?
not the attorney for the planning board, so.
Anything else for discussion?
Yes. Oh, unless there's another Board of Education member that would like to say something.
No, I just didn't hear where that yes was coming from. Yes. Dr. Labby.
Came from far beyond, Mr. Shea.
It's getting late.
As we mentioned this evening in both the budget presentation as well as my board agenda report, we do need to complete that work at Truman. We have to start that work before the end of this school year. We need to get that bid approved. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get those bids.
The bid specs will be able to advertise on May 16th. I don't actually have the bid specs yet from our architect, but I anticipate I'll have them soon. But then we'd also need to do a walkthrough and then have our bid opening. So we would need another meeting if we wanted to get the work started right after school lets out at the end of the year, because it's obviously not going to be ready for the May 16th meeting to approve whatever contractor gets the bid.
So the earliest that the bids will be ready for approval would be June 13th. So in essence, what Ms. Hill and I are asking is if we can have a special Board of Education meeting on June 13th so that we can approve those bids and begin that important work.
Will we still need the meeting on the 27th? Because I mean,
Yes.
we used to do that
Yes.
meeting.
Yes,
He said yes.
yes.
Is the 27th the only one?
Does it mean we
Why-
could have it slower? or
What do
would
we
it
need
have
to
be
do on the
immediately?
27th? We can't do
Because
the
it-
13th.
Because the 27th is the time period in which we make last-minute changes to personnel. It's almost as important as that August personnel meeting.
Okay.
It's also when Erin's closing out the school year,
Right.
and she'll need different approvals for that.
Okay.
We initially didn't think we would need another Board of Education meeting, and quite frankly, we don't, but we want to get this work going. Very important work, and we want this work completed before the kids come back to school in September. That's why we're doing it now.
Is that all we'd have to do at that meeting, or?
Well, if we're going to have the meeting, we'll put other things on there. We have our summer school programs.
Or do a, but if we have to have it here, doesn't matter.
It won't be a long meeting, there won't be presentations or anything, but if we're going to have a meeting, we can throw some other personnel items on it, because we do have our summer programs that.
Yeah, we might as well get whatever else we need. Anyone opposed to June 13th?
So will it be 6:30?
6:30, we'll have our normal meeting. If we need an exec session, if you want, we don't have to have an exec session if there's no need for it.
That's good.
So we could actually start it, the public session, at 6:30 if we don't need an executive session.
All right.
I'll keep you posted on that. You never know what will come
I'll
up.
put 6:30.
All right, can I have a motion to approve a special meeting on June 13th?
So moved.
At 6:30 PM
Yeah.
at Sayreville War Memorial High School by Mr.
Second.
McEnroe, and I have a second by Mr. Walsh. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. We're in express mode, Ms. Hill. Anyone else for comments, discussion, other items? Hearing none, we will open up to public for any item concerning the district. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. We have warned the public out. Thank you very much.
They said it on the agenda.
Our next meeting will be scheduled for May 16th.
Motion to
Can I have a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn by Mr. McEnroe? Do I have a second?
Get out of
By Mr. Machado. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
latest board meeting I've ever been to in 12 years.
Yeah, but we spent a lot of time talking about student achievement.
Oh, fine.